Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Shamika Bond, the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Decatur. For the past 48 years, the Boys and Girls Club Decatur have been the forefront of youth development here in Macon County. On March 14, 2020, the deadly virus known as COVID-19 forced us to close our doors. During these devastating times, we stayed true to our mission by continuing to serve the youth in our community by providing after-hour meals, mentorship, and continued with recognition. We were afraid of the unknown, we were afraid of each other, but most importantly, we were afraid for those children that needed us most. Our children more than ever need leadership, guidance, and support. After months of being closed, we are pleased to announce the Boys and Girls Club of Decatur reopened their doors to the community yesterday, June 8, 2020. We are following Governor Pritzker's plan to restore Illinois by following the IDPH requirements, which are keeping classroom sizes to 10 or fewer children, implementing social distancing policy, and using the appropriate personal protective equipment to keep everyone safe. As this process has not been easy for anyone, I am overwhelmed by the support of our board members, our staff, and the families who have made reopening possible. At this time, I would like to introduce State Representative Sue Scheer. Thank you.
It's so nice to have a new director here, and you're doing a fine job, so thank you very much. And thank you all for coming out. I know that's quite an adventure just to leave your house these days. I couldn't be happier that we've got the Boys and Girls Club open. This is one of the areas that I, in my heart, have been so worried about the children. They're so used to spending time at Boys and Girls Club, and then when school was out and doing remote learning, it's made me very nervous. So that is a heavy weight off of all of our backs that are up here, that we aren't as worried about that now that it's open. We would love to have it open full speed, but it's most important that everyone stays safe. And you have to say, when you put your head on the pillow at night, if you're alive and healthy, well, we're thanking our governor for that, because that was not easy choices that he's been making. But, you know, it's the right thing, and the right thing, my dad would say, is not the easy thing. So I just want to say how critically important it is in these times that we offer the programs and the services for Boys and Girls Club. Senator Menard and I have worked tirelessly to make sure that the funding continues for clubs just like this, because these are our children, these are our most neediest, these are the ones that we need to tuck under our wing and take care of. And we're now finally doing the right thing. It's been many years coming. We went a few years without a budget, and how Boys and Girls Club stayed open. They pulled a rabbit out of their hat to stay open during those times. And I'm so proud of you for not giving up the ship. And we are back now and able to support you the way we should be. And thank goodness for our children. So I would now have the distinct honor of introducing our Senator, Andy Menard. I don't think people have any idea how hard he works at the Capitol to secure a budget that takes care of the people of our community and throughout the state. And it is my absolute honor to be the representative in his district. So Senator Andy Menard.
Thank you. Thank you to the representative. We didn't get to spend as much time together as we usually do because we had a compressed session, but that doesn't mean that we got less done for the Decatur community. I appreciate her partnership very much. Governor, we appreciate you visiting Decatur as always. You are no stranger to this community. We're here today to, first of all, support the work of Shamika and the staff and the board of the Boys and Girls Club here in Decatur. So many good things happen within the walls of this building. I always leave here in a very good mood whenever I come because of all of the good work that happens for children in Decatur at the club here. Sue mentioned the budget. we are able to reopen child care providers and community-based providers because we prioritize that funding in the budget this year. We chose not to slash and burn programs that impact youth, impact at-risk youth, that would be detrimental to communities like Decatur. We made that choice, and I think that was the right choice in the budget that we passed a couple of weeks ago when we were in our compressed session. Number two, I think it's important to note that COVID-19 hasn't gone away. It is still very much a part of our lives in Illinois, and it will be for months to come without question. So in order to combat that, we have to make sure that community level providers have the funding that they need to be resourced and staffed. And that means funding teen reach programs. It means funding child care programs. It's giving resources to Shamika and the staff here so that they can provide child care, so that when parents go back to work, there's an option for children to have a productive atmosphere. That's what we know happens well here, and that's why we're proud to support those things. And I know the governor's proud to support it. The mayor is proud to support those types of measures in the state budget because we know they pay dividends for kids right here in Decatur. So I have the privilege. By the way, it's good to see so many faces face to face, even at a distance. I would have given anything to see Ada Owen's smiling face, even though she has a mask on, at any point in time during the pandemic. But it's good to see so many faces that I haven't seen in many weeks. We're fortunate to have the governor with us again here in Decatur to talk about the importance of the work of the Boys and Girls Club. And it's my privilege to introduce him. He has been a partner for us. He has been a partner for us on so many things. And I could list them off, from economic development projects that the mayor advocates for every single day for this community, to making sure that child care providers have rate increases in downstate Illinois, to making sure that infrastructure investment is coming to Macon County, beyond just the city of Decatur, but for that unified plan for transportation development. The governor has been a supporter of all of those things, and I'm pleased to introduce him. Welcome, Governor Pritzker.
Thank you very much. Let me begin just by saying, and really doubling down on something that Senator Menard said, and that is, you can't help but smile when you walk in to the Boys and Girls Club of Decatur. First of all, because the kids are in such a good mood. They're so glad to be here. Second, because of all the hard work that the people of Decatur have done, because of all the hard work that you, Shamika, and the staff here have done, the idea that you're able to reopen, to run this facility in a responsible fashion that keeps these kids and your staff safe. I was glad to see that with very little prompting, when Shamika asked, how do we show that we're socially distancing, and everybody lifted their arms like this to show that, as long as you're not touching somebody, you're probably socially distancing just fine. And I love to see that the kids are enthusiastic about following those rules, and also the smiles on their faces. Even with a little rain outside, they're indoors and smiling and enjoying themselves. So I just want to first compliment the people who run this facility and who are making it possible for there to be camp this summer, for there to be childcare, for there to be after-school programs for the children of Decatur. And let me also say about the elected officials that are standing with me and behind me today that first, your mayor is outstanding. I hear from her regularly about the needs of Decatur, and honestly, that's a great thing. As a governor, you want to know what the cities of the state of Illinois need, and you want to hear it from people who are responsible leaders thinking about building for the future, not just for the next year, but for the next decade. And your mayor is one of the great leaders in the state. And of course, your representative and your senator, I talk to all the time, and I'm very pleased to work with in Springfield. And it's true that the budget of the state is so important. People don't really think about budgets much. I think average folks think that budget is a pretty boring thing to talk about. But a budget is a moral document. It's an expression of who we are as a people here in the state. It's expression of what we believe in. The investments that we make are a reflection of who we are. And so that's why a budget is so important. It sounds like a boring topic, but when you go without one for a couple of years, as we did a few years ago, you find out just how important it is to pass it. And then when you actually apply a lot of thought to the priorities of the state, you can actually pass a budget and invest in things that really matter. And so I'm really pleased that we were all able to work together to pass the budget that we had for FY20 and the one that was passed in a compressed fashion in FY21. Challenging year, as all of you know, but it's an important year for us to make sure that we're investing in the people of our state, even though we've lost revenue, even though COVID has been an enormous challenge for our state. As I look at the year ahead, and I know as your representatives do, we know that there are an awful lot of people who are hurting, and they need the services that the state offers. This is exactly the kind of moment in our history when we need to do more, not less. And so I was pleased to see the work that was done by the legislature, so difficult as it is to put a budget together in this environment, but I'll be pleased to sign it. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I know that all the representatives and of course Shamika Bond, leading the Boys and Girls Club, will be happy to answer any questions as well.
Governor, are you worried about mixed messaging with some of your public appearances and crowds outdoors, but there are some state lawmakers today saying that that might send a confusing message to the people that still want to know from you and your leadership, should people be gathering with people on this tent?
Well, people should still be socially distancing. Senator Menard said it, COVID-19, coronavirus is still out there. So people need to do everything they can, wash your hands, socially distance, everything that you can that we've provided information about for the Department of Public Health. As a public official, I go around and preach that to everybody. Sometimes I go places and it's very difficult to get socially distanced when an awful lot of people show up, and I'm not going to run away. And especially at this moment, it's important to express ourselves. It's important to stand up for people's First Amendment rights, and I'm talking about the peaceful protesters across the state. It's important to have the governor stand with them on issues that are important to the state and progress that we need to make. So while I would like not to be in an environment in which we're not socially distancing, I sometimes am required to be places. And one thing I will tell you, though, that while I absolutely think that everybody here needs to be cognizant of socially distancing, wearing a mask is equally, if not more, important. And I was so pleased to see that so many of those who are exercising their First Amendment rights were in fact wearing masks, trying to keep each other healthy, and I was too.
We saw a lot of big events in the northern part of the state canceled today, official word coming down. Is it time to pull the plug on the state fair, or do you have hope that that can still happen?
Well, I'm trying to follow the advice of the epidemiologists that advise me from the Department of Public Health, as well as those that I talk to around the country about large gatherings. I am concerned, as I've told you, about the protesters and some of them conveying COVID-19 to each other. And so it seems like, we're going to have to listen to the epidemiologists continuing going forward. One of the challenges as we look into August is it takes a lot of time to set up these events, and not knowing whether or not we'll be able to have large gatherings in August is confounding to anybody that's planning a large event, because you can't just snap your fingers and decide a week later you're going to have some large event like a state fair. So we'll have to consider all of our options here, but at least right now in phase 3 it would be hard to do.
Will you feel a lot more confident moving forward 2 or 3 weeks from now if we don't see a big spike in new cases because of all these?
Listen, I live every day looking at the numbers, thinking about the direction that infection rates are going, that positivity rates are going, the number of people who end up in hospital beds, and of course the number of deaths. And I mean, literally, I wake up every morning and I look at a dashboard that tells me how we're doing. And some days, we're doing, we have, a month ago we were going the wrong direction. Today we're going, these days we're going the right direction. All I can tell you is we're going to continue to watch those numbers and try to guide them downward by making sure that everybody is doing what they ought to do to try to defeat the virus, or at least to make sure they don't get infected.
This is an election year. I want to ask about two debate issues from President Trump this morning. Suggested that a video of a 70-plus-year-old man in Buffalo falling and splitting his head could have been a setup. Like, didn't really give any evidence to that. But I want to ask you not to respond necessarily directly to him, but to this headline that also followed up and said, if Republicans are ever going to turn on Trump, this might be the moment. What do you say to Illinois Republicans in Congress who can't find the words to respond to something like this? Should they?
Yeah, or they should leave office. I mean, honestly, if you can't see that this president is offensive to most Americans, that he stands for policies that are attacking many Americans, that he's a divisive force in this country, that he would tweet as he did about this Minneapolis man. Look, I don't know this Minneapolis man, but anybody watching that video knows that he was pushed. So, he's just making things up. He does that all the time. And if the Republican representatives in the state of Illinois can't talk about that, can't call it out when they see it, they shouldn't be holding public office.
Governor, I actually have a question from WQAD out of the Quad Cities.
Yes.
So they are asking about there's a gun range in their area that's allowing people in using the medical issues loophole. They want to know, what are the qualifying medical issues that are allowed in your executive order, and can someone be asked about a medical issue when entering an establishment?
You're talking about not wearing masks? Is that what you're saying? They're not wearing masks and saying they have a medical issue. Look, people are not walking around with doctor's orders about their medical issue wearing a mask. So, it's difficult, if not impossible, to ask somebody to prove what their medical issue is. So, look, we can't police everything about, trying to keep people healthy. What we can do is provide public health guidance from the experts and show people the data and show them the science, talk about it every day, and then ask people to do the right thing. And let me be clear, I don't know about this gun range you're talking about. What I can tell you is the vast majority of people in the state have been doing the right thing, and you're seeing the results of it now. And we are heading in the right direction. That does not mean that the virus is gone away. It's still there. But the more we adhere to these mitigation methods, the better off we're going to be hoping for a very effective treatment or a virus vaccine.
And I have another question. This is from my colleague at WAND, asking about June 26th being a tentative date for moving to phase 4. We heard last month you said that after 28 days we could move to phase 4. Is June 26th a date that you're aiming for, or is there any idea of when we could move to phase 4?
Yeah, June 26th would be the first date that any region could move to phase 4. And again, the reason is because counting from May 29th, 28 days, that gets you to the beginning of June 26th. But remember why we didn't just arbitrarily pick these numbers, right? It's about incubation periods. It's about monitoring what happens once you lift some restrictions, as we did at the end of phase 2, going into phase 3. We've lifted a lot of restrictions. Things are much more open. Now what you want to see is, are infection rates going to rise? They don't rise immediately. I know there are people who look at the protesters that were out, and then they want to look at the infection rates in the couple days after and say, see, it doesn't transmit. Look, people aren't getting sick. Our hospitalization numbers are not going up. But that's not how it works. As you know, it takes weeks before you start to see hospitalizations and ICU beds fill up. And unfortunately, 3 to 4 weeks before you start to see deaths as a result.
My last question for you would be, right now we have a situation unfolding just a couple of blocks from here with a police scene that is becoming pretty volatile with members of the African American community yelling at police right now in the streets, trying to get them to leave the area. We briefly touched on this earlier, but what would be your message to those members of our community who are so upset with police and what they're seeing happen nationwide?
Well, look, I think that I've been actually heartened by the peaceful protest. People who are trying to goad police into into doing something that they shouldn't do. shouldn't be doing that, that they should be expressing themselves. They have the right to do that, again, peacefully. You know, and I just, you know, I stand with them in the desire to make real change that will address what I think is systemic racism that's existed for generations, indeed for the entire history of the United States. And this is a unique moment, in my view, for us to look hard at policies, at investments, and ask what we can do differently to address this. And that includes, in my view, addressing police accountability, addressing criminal justice reform, and very importantly, addressing the question of disinvestment, or rather the lack of investment for so many years in communities of color. That doesn't mean that other communities should be left out. There are a lot of investments that need to be made all across the state of Illinois, and I've tried to do that. We passed a capital bill that helps to do that. We have a budget that reflects that. But I think this is a unique moment where people's voices are being heard, and they're not just black voices, I might add. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. But look at how many people were standing with Black Lives Matter protesters who were Black Lives Matter protesters who are not black. And I was one of them, and am one of them.
As communities may be reconsidering police department funding.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning.
As communities may be reconsidering police department funding and structure, will the state offer them any guidance? What do you think are some constructive ways for cities to respond to protesters who are asking for communities to defund the police?
Well, some of what I was just saying addresses that. I mean, we have, again, there are systems in place that haven't worked for communities of color, indeed have led to, well, as happened in Minneapolis, the death of George Floyd. And so that's an example of things that need to change all over the country. That's one instance that was filmed. There are many that aren't filmed. But there's much more that needs to be done. You know, we have to address issues like, you know, are chokeholds by police something that we want to continue to allow? Should there be licensing of police officers in the state? These are examples of things that are on a long list of considerations that I'm making about what policies we ought to change and what we ought to be proposing to the legislature, keeping in mind that we all want public safety. That's what everybody's after. The protesters, the police, the people who are at home watching it and worrying, we all want public safety in the end. And the question is, how do we get it in a fashion that doesn't have a racial tinge to it?
And I know there's been discussion of ways to help casinos, but here in central Illinois, there are hundreds of gambling parlors and bars and restaurants that rely on video gambling income. What can be done to assist those folks?
Well, we're right now, you know, trying to figure out, we have video gaming terminals as well as casinos across the state that are not operational today as a result of COVID-19. And you've seen the challenges that exist, you know, the number of fingers that touch all of the machines, you know, the challenge that casinos have of, you know, chips and cards and, you know, all the things that get touched in common, not to mention the social distancing, which is near impossible if you've got 5 or 6 machines that are next to each other in a convenience store, in a restaurant, or otherwise. So these are very difficult things to consider in the absence of a very effective treatment. I'm, you know, putting aside a vaccine for a moment because we're much closer to having very effective treatment. And so you know, these are not political considerations, I want to be clear. These are public health considerations. And so the decisions that I make are very much dependent upon the science and the data. I'm going to continue to do that. I know how difficult that is in some industries today.
Governor, some reporters watching. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, my last question for you is actually from Greg Pritzker from the Center Square. When the science changes, how does that guide your recommendations? In particular, will your safe covering guidelines change since the World Health Organization says your research shows asymptomatic spread is close to very rare?
Well, they've just gone back on that today and retracted that. So, you know, I'm watching all the science. I read that yesterday and said, oh, you know, what, in fact, I sent it immediately to Dr. Ezike when I saw it and said, what is the implication of this for us, and what policy recommendations would you have from public health perspective. Of course, all that's been rolled back, I think, over the last 24 hours. But I am watching, as you are, as I think everybody is, what the best science is that's out there and trying to follow it. Yep. Okay. That's it? Okay. Thank you. Well, I'll take this one last one. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a target date yet when you'll be able to, hopefully be able to tell schools what the plans are for the fall?
Yeah, well, we've tried to be very communicative, in fact, with all of our schools, in that we don't have the answer to, you know, is it completely safe for everybody to go back to school? And if you did, how would it work? But what we have tried to do is to keep following along. I am determined and extraordinarily hopeful that we will be, in fact, opening up our schools. But I'm not ultimately the right person to make the final call. That is, we have to consider the public health implications, because I think you've seen that there are circumstances in which young people can get a version of coronavirus. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, not to mention all the people who work at our schools, who are adults, who are over 40, which is about where the cutoff seems to be for more vulnerable, less vulnerable. And so we're going to watch all of that, but we're also preparing schools for the possibility that there will need to still be distance learning. And again, like I was saying about the state fair and decisions about that, you can't make these decisions in the last minute. So it's true that very shortly we're going to have to work on what is the consensus view about going back to school for the state of Illinois. I know there have been different decisions in different states. It's leaning toward people going back to school, but my decisions are going to again be made by, based upon the data and the science and the recommendations that come. We'll try to get there as soon as we can so schools can prepare. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.